The acrid smoke still clung to Oliver Finch's nostrils when consciousness dragged him back from the void, his body swaying with a rhythm that made no sense until he realized he was moving without moving his own legs. His head lolled against something hard and warm, and when his eyes finally focused through the haze of pain, he saw the ground passing beneath him in long, purposeful strides that were not his own. The battlefield stretched behind them in a nightmare of twisted bodies and broken weapons, the afternoon sun casting long shadows across the carnage where three armies had met and torn each other apart. "You are awake," a voice rumbled above him, deep and feminine with an accent that turned the common tongue into something musical and strange. "Good. I was beginning to think I had wasted my strength on a corpse." Oliver tried to speak, but his throat was desert dry and tasted of blood. He managed only a rasping sound that might have been a question. The world tilted as the person carrying him adjusted her grip, and he found himself looking up at a face that should have terrified him but somehow did not. Green skin, darker than spring grass and lighter than pine needles, stretched over high cheekbones and a strong jaw. Two small tusks curved up from her lower lip, white as bone against the green. Her eyes, when they met his, were amber gold with flecks of brown, intelligent and assessing. "You are too light to leave behind," she said, and there was something almost amused in her tone. "When I saw you breathing beneath that dead horse, I thought perhaps you might be worth saving. The gods know why. You humans have done nothing but hunt my people like animals." He was being carried like a child in her arms, he realized, with a mixture of humiliation and gratitude. She wore leather armor that had seen better days, scarred and stained with battle, and her black hair was pulled back in a thick braid that hung past her shoulders. She stood perhaps a head taller than him, with shoulders broad enough to carry his weight without apparent strain. "Where?" Oliver managed to croak, each word an effort. "Where are you taking me?" "Away from the ravens and the scavengers," she replied, her pace never slowing. "And away from any of your kind who might decide that an orc carrying a human is an abomination worth killing over. I have a camp in the hills. You will recover there or you will die there, but either way, you will not die on that field with the others." The logical part of his mind knew he should be afraid. Orcs were the enemy, had always been the enemy in the stories he had grown up with. They raided villages, killed without mercy, took what they wanted and burned the rest. But those stories seemed distant and hollow as he looked up at her face, set with determination as she carried him away from certain death. She could have left him, should have left him by all accounts. Her people and his had just spent the better part of a day trying to slaughter each other. Why? He asked, the single word all he could manage. She did not answer immediately, her eyes scanning the landscape ahead. They had left the battlefield proper now, moving into the rolling hills that marked the disputed borderlands between human territory and the orc holds beyond. The grass here was tall and golden in the late summer heat, untrampled by armies and unstained by blood. "I do not know," she finally admitted, and there was something raw in her voice that suggested the question troubled her as much as it troubled him. "Perhaps I am tired of death. Perhaps I saw your face and thought you looked too young to feed the crows. Perhaps I am a fool who will regret this mercy before the week is out." Oliver wanted to say something, to thank her or reassure her or simply to keep her talking so he could anchor himself to something beyond the pain that pulsed through his body with every beat of his heart. But darkness was creeping in at the edges of his vision again, and the swaying motion of being carried was lulling him back toward unconsciousness, despite his efforts to resist. "Stay awake if you can," she said, and he felt her arms tighten around him slightly. "I need to know how badly you are hurt. Can you feel your legs? He focused, trying to take inventory of his body. Everything hurt, but that was almost reassuring. Pain meant he was alive, meant things were still working. His left leg throbbed with a deep bone ache that suggested injury, but he could feel it. He could feel all of it, the pain and the exhaustion and the strange warmth of her arms around him. "Yes," he whispered. "Everything hurts." "Good," she said, and he thought he heard relief in that single word. Hurting means healing. It is the absence of pain you must fear. They traveled for what felt like hours but might have been less, time becoming fluid and uncertain. Oliver drifted in and out of awareness, catching glimpses of the landscape changing around them. The hills grew steeper, the grass giving way to scrubland and scattered trees. The sun sank lower, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple that reminded him of better days, of sunsets watched from his family's farm before the war had come and consumed everything. When they finally stopped, full darkness had fallen, and the stars were beginning to emerge overhead. The orc woman lowered him carefully to the ground, propping him against a large rock that still held the day's warmth. He could see now that they were in a small clearing, sheltered on three sides by steep hillsides and hidden from casual view. A fire pit sat cold in the center, stones arranged in a careful circle, and basic supplies were tucked beneath a canvas shelter. This was no temporary stopping place. She had been here before, perhaps many times. "I am going to examine your wounds," she said, kneeling beside him. "I will try not to cause you more pain, but I make no promises. You are covered in blood, and I cannot tell what is yours and what belonged to others." Her hands were surprisingly gentle as she began to check him over, fingers probing carefully at his limbs and torso. He hissed when she touched his left leg, and she paused, her amber eyes meeting his in the gathering darkness. "Broken," she said, more to herself than to him. "Not badly, I think, but it will need to be set. Do you have other injuries I should know about? Wounds that bleed?" Oliver tried to think through the fog of pain and exhaustion. "My side," he managed. "Something cut me, I do not know what." She moved to his side, carefully pulling aside the torn remnants of his shirt. He heard her breath hiss between her teeth, not a good sign. "Deep," she said quietly. "But clean. You are lucky. A few inches higher and it would have opened your belly. As it is, you will have a scar to frighten children with, but you should live if infection does not take you." "Lucky," he repeated, and the word came out almost as a laugh. "I suppose being carried off a battlefield by an orc counts as lucky." She looked at him then, really looked at him, and he saw something shift in her expression. "What is your name, human? If I am to save your life, I should at least know what to call you." "Oliver," he said. "Oliver Finch. I was a farmer before the war. I do not suppose that matters much now." "I am Karga," she replied. "No family name, as your people would understand it. I was a hunter and a warrior of the Black Ridge clan before they cast me out for refusing to kill a human child during a raid. So you see, we are both far from where we began." There was a story there, Oliver thought, layers of pain and choice that he could only guess at. But before he could ask, she was moving again, gathering supplies from beneath the canvas shelter. She returned with strips of cloth, a waterskin, and what looked like dried herbs wrapped in leather. "This will hurt," she warned him, and then she was cleaning the wound in his side with water that stung like fire. He bit down on his lip hard enough to taste blood, trying not to cry out. She worked quickly and efficiently, her hands steady, and when she was done, she packed the wound with crushed herbs that smelled of mint and something sharper, more medicinal. "For infection," she explained, binding the herbs in place with strips of cloth wrapped tight around his torso. "It is an old remedy, taught to me by my grandmother. Your healers probably have their own medicines, but we are far from your healers, and this is what I have." Next came his leg, and that was worse. She had to straighten it first, and despite her warning, despite his attempts to brace himself, the pain was blinding. He heard someone screaming and realized dimly that it was him, the sound tearing from his throat without permission. Then her hand was on his forehead, surprisingly cool, and her voice was in his ear, low and soothing. "It is done, Oliver Finch. The worst is done. Breathe now, just breathe." He came back to himself slowly, gasping like a drowning man. She had already splinted his leg, binding it between two straight branches with more strips of cloth. The pain had settled to a deep, throbbing ache that pulsed in time with his heartbeat, bearable if he did not move. "You did well," Karga said, sitting back on her heels. "Many men would have passed out from that. You are stronger than you look." "I do not feel strong," Oliver admitted, his voice shaking. "I feel like I am about to fall apart." "But you have not," she pointed out. "That is what matters." She built a fire as night settled fully over the hills, coaxing flames from tinder and dried wood with practiced ease. The light and warmth were blessings Oliver had not known he needed, pushing back the chill that had begun to seep into his bones. She produced more supplies from her shelter: dried meat, hard bread, a small pot for heating water, and soon the smell of weak soup filled the clearing. "You need to eat," she said, offering him a wooden bowl filled with broth and softened bread. "Even if you do not feel hungry. Your body needs fuel to heal." He took the bowl with shaking hands, surprised to find how difficult even that simple act was. She watched him struggle for a moment, then moved to sit beside him, close enough that he could lean against the rock and still manage the bowl without spilling. The soup was simple but good, warming him from the inside out. He ate slowly, each swallow an effort, but gradually he could feel a bit of strength returning. Karga ate as well, tearing into dried meat with her tusks, the small protrusions catching the firelight. In the dancing shadows, she looked almost ethereal, something out of myth rather than the flesh and blood woman who had carried him for miles. "Why were you at the battle?" she asked after a time, her voice quiet. "If you were a farmer, you were not born to war." Oliver stared into the fire, watching the flames twist and curl. "No one is born to war," he said, "but it comes for us anyway. Lord Hartwell conscripted every able man from 3 provinces. We were told the orcs were gathering, that they planned to invade, to destroy our homes and enslave our families. We were told we had to fight or lose everything." "And do you believe that?" Karga asked. "That we are monsters who want nothing but destruction?" He looked at her, at this woman who had saved his life for no reason he could understand, and found he could not speak the easy lies his commanders had fed him. "I do not know what to believe anymore. Before today, I had never seen an orc. All I knew were the stories, and stories are easy to tell when you are trying to make men into killers. But you saved me. You did not have to, but you did. That does not fit the stories they told us." Karga was quiet for a long moment, her amber eyes reflecting the firelight. "Your people tell stories about us," she said finally. "We tell stories about you. Humans who burn our homes, who hunt us for sport, who kill our young because they think we are animals. Some of those stories are true. Some of ours are true as well. The truth is, we are all capable of great cruelty and great kindness. The war makes us forget the kindness." "Why were you cast out?" Oliver asked, emboldened by darkness and pain and the strange intimacy of their situation. "You said you refused to kill a child." Her jaw tightened, and for a moment he thought she would not answer. Then she sighed, a sound that seemed to carry the weight of old sorrows. "It was during a raid on a human settlement near the border. I was young, eager to prove myself to the clan. We struck at dawn, as is our way. Most of the fighting men were already gone, conscripted just as you were. There were only the old ones, the women, the children. My war leader ordered us to kill them all, to leave no one who might carry tales or seek revenge. She paused, staring into the fire as if seeing that day again in the flames. I found a boy, perhaps 8 summers old, hiding in a cellar. He was crying, calling for his mother. He looked at me with such terror, such certainty that he was about to die, and I could not do it. I could not kill a child who reminded me so much of my younger brother, so I let him go. I told him to run and not look back. Your war leader discovered this, Oliver prompted when she fell silent. One of my shield sisters saw, Karga said, her voice flat. She reported me when we returned to the clan. I was brought before the elders and given a choice. Take my own life to restore my honor or be cast out and never return. I chose exile. Some would say that makes me a coward. I would say it makes you brave, Oliver said quietly. It is easy to kill when everyone around you says it is right. It takes courage to refuse. She looked at him then, surprise clear in her face. You are strange, Oliver Finch. Most humans would spit at the thought of an orc having honor or courage. Most orcs would have left me to die on that battlefield, he countered. It seems we are both strange. The ghost of a smile touched her lips, softening the harsh lines of her face. Perhaps that is why the gods put us in each other's path. 2 outcasts who no longer fit the stories their people tell. They sat in companionable silence after that, the fire crackling between them and the night alive, with the sounds of insects and distant night birds. Oliver felt exhaustion pulling at him like a physical weight, his body demanding rest to begin the work of healing. But he fought it, reluctant to surrender consciousness when so much remained uncertain. You should sleep, Karga said, as if reading his thoughts. You are safe here. I will keep watch. Safe with an orc, Oliver murmured, but there was no fear in it, only a kind of wondering irony. My mother would not believe it. My clan would kill me if they knew, Karga replied. So we are even. Now sleep, human. Morning will come whether you rest or not, and you will need your strength. He wanted to argue, to stay awake and keep talking with this strange woman who had appended everything he thought he knew about the world. But his body had other ideas, and darkness claimed him before he could form another word. Oliver woke to birdsong and the smell of cooking meat, his mind struggling to orient itself. For a moment, he could not remember where he was or how he had gotten there, and panic flared in his chest. Then memory returned in a rush: the battle, the pain, being carried through the hills by an orc woman who should have been his enemy, but had instead saved his life. He opened his eyes to find morning sun filtering through the trees overhead, painting everything in shades of gold and green. The fire had been rebuilt, and Karga knelt beside it, turning what looked like rabbit on a spit. She had removed her armor, and he could see now that beneath it she wore a simple tunic and leather trousers, practical clothing much like what he had worn on the farm. Her braid had come partially loose during the night, and strands of black hair fell around her face, softening her features. You are awake, she said without turning. How do you feel? Oliver took stock of himself. Everything still hurt, but it was a different kind of pain than yesterday, less sharp and immediate, more of a deep ache that spoke of healing rather than active damage. Like I was stepped on by a horse, he admitted, but alive, better than I expected. The fever has not come, Karga said, and he heard relief in her voice. That is good. If you can get through today without fever, you will likely survive. She turned to face him, holding out a strip of cooked meat. Eat. You need to keep your strength up. He accepted the meat gratefully, his stomach growling at the smell. It was gamey but well cooked, seasoned with herbs that added flavor without overwhelming. They ate in silence, and Oliver found himself studying his unlikely savior in the morning light. She moved with an easy grace that spoke of confidence in her own body, and there was a competence to everything she did that he recognized from his own years working the farm. These were hands that knew labor, that understood the value of doing things right the first time. "How long will I need to stay here?" he asked when the meat was gone. "I do not want to impose on you longer than necessary." Karga regarded him with an unreadable expression. "Where would you go? The battle is lost for both sides from what I saw. The human army was routed, scattered to the winds. My own people likely think I am dead if they think of me at all. Neither of us has a home to return to." The truth of that hit Oliver harder than he expected. His farm was gone, burned by raiders months ago, his parents dead or fled, he did not know which. He had nothing and no one waiting for him, no place to return to when the war was done. He was as much an outcast as Karga, though his exile was circumstance rather than choice. "Then what do we do?" he asked, hearing the helplessness in his own voice and hating it. "We survive," Karga said simply. "That is all any of us can do. Your leg will take weeks to heal properly, perhaps longer. You will stay here until you can walk again. After that." She shrugged, a very human gesture. "After that, we decide what comes next." The days that followed fell into a rhythm that was almost peaceful, or would have been if not for the constant pain and the knowledge of all they had lost. Karga hunted and gathered food, disappearing into the hills for hours at a time, and always returning with something: rabbits, birds, once a young deer that provided meat for days. Oliver did what he could to help, which was frustratingly little with his leg bound and his side still healing. He tended the fire, sorted herbs, prepared what food he could reach from his position against the rock that had become his resting place. They talked, at first in fits and starts, neither quite sure what to say to the other. But gradually, as the hours turned to days, they began to open up. Oliver told her about the farm, about growing up with dirt under his nails, and the satisfaction of watching things grow from seeds he had planted. He told her about his mother, who had sung while she worked, and his father, who had taught him that honest labor was its own reward. Karga, in turn, spoke of the Black Ridge clan, of growing up in the mountains with her 3 brothers and learning to hunt in the high passes. She described festivals and traditions that sounded nothing like the savage rites Oliver had been told about, full of music and storytelling and elaborate ceremonies to honor the dead. She spoke of her grandmother, a healer who had taught her the properties of every plant in the mountains, knowledge that had saved Oliver's life. "Do you miss it?" Oliver asked one evening as they sat by the fire, the sun setting in brilliant colors beyond the hills. "Your clan, your home." Karga was quiet for a long time, her face thoughtful. "I miss my family," she said finally. "My brothers, my grandmother, I miss the festivals and the hunts, but the clan wanted me to be something I could not be. They wanted a warrior who would kill without question, who would follow orders even when those orders were wrong. I could not be that person, not anymore. So yes, I miss what I lost, but I do not regret my choice." "Do you ever wish you had made a different choice?" Oliver pressed. "That you had killed the boy and kept your place?" She turned to look at him, her amber eyes fierce in the firelight. "Never," she said with absolute conviction. "I would make the same choice every time, no matter the cost. Some things are more important than belonging. You must know this. You were conscripted to fight, but you could have run, could have hidden. You chose to go." "I did not want to be a coward," Oliver admitted. "Everyone I knew was going. How could I stay behind and live with myself?" "And now," Karga asked, "now that you have seen what war is, what it does to people, would you still make the same choice?" Oliver thought about the battlefield, about the screams and the blood and the terrible waste of it all. Young men from farms and villages, dying for causes they barely understood at the orders of lords who would never risk their own lives. He thought about the orc warriors he had seen fall, who had families and homes and dreams just as he had. All of it gone, turned to carrion and grief. "No," he said quietly. "If I could go back, I would run, I would hide. I would be a coward and alive rather than honorable and dead. Or worse, honorable and a killer of people who never did me any harm." "Then you are wiser now than you were," Karga said. "Wisdom often comes at a terrible price." As Oliver's strength slowly returned, so too did his ability to move around the camp. Karga fashioned him a crutch from a sturdy branch, and he learned to hobble around on one leg, grateful for even that limited mobility. His side was healing well, the wound closing cleanly under Karga's careful tending. The herbs she used left a strange tingling sensation, but he could not argue with the results. One afternoon, perhaps 2 weeks after she had carried him off the battlefield, Oliver managed to make his way to a small stream that ran near the camp. Karga had gone hunting, and he relished the brief solitude, the chance to feel like a person rather than an invalid. He sat on the bank and carefully removed the bandages from his side, wanting to clean the wound in the clear water. He was examining the puckered red scar, marveling that he had survived such an injury, when he heard footsteps behind him. He turned, expecting Karga, and found himself face to face with 2 orc warriors he had never seen before. They wore the clan markings of the Black Ridge, painted on their armor in stark black and white, and their hands were on their weapons. "What do we have here?" one of them said, his common tongue heavily accented but understandable. "A human, far from human lands, bearing the scent of our traitor sister." Oliver's heart hammered in his chest, but he forced himself to remain still, not reaching for a weapon he did not have. "I mean no harm," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. "I am injured, nothing more." "You are breathing," the second warrior said, a female with a scar across her face that twisted one side of her mouth into a permanent sneer. "That is harm enough. Where is Karga? We tracked her to this place." "Not here," Oliver said, which was true if incomplete. "And she is not your concern. She saved my life. I owe her a debt." The male warrior laughed, a harsh sound without humor. "She saved a human, how fitting. The traitor who would not kill humans is now their nursemaid." "Our war leader will want to hear of this." "Your war leader cast her out," Oliver said, anger overriding caution. "You have no claim on her anymore. Leave her alone." "Bold words from a cripple," the female warrior said, drawing a wicked-looking knife. "Perhaps we should send a message to the traitor. Your head might make a fine gift." Oliver braced himself, knowing he had no chance against 2 healthy warriors when he could barely stand. But before either of them could move, a voice rang out across the clearing, strong and commanding. "Touch him and die." Karga emerged from the trees, bow drawn and an arrow nocked, the point aimed unwaveringly at the male warrior's throat. She had come back earlier than expected, had perhaps heard the voices and approached quietly. There was nothing soft or gentle in her expression now. This was the warrior her clan had trained, dangerous and deadly. "Karga," the male warrior said, but there was uncertainty in his voice now. "Sister, be reasonable. This is a human, our enemy." "He is under my protection," Karga said flatly, "and I am not your sister. You made that clear when you supported my exile. Now go, Garak. Take Shura with you and return to the clan. Tell them you found nothing here but empty hills." "We cannot do that," Shura said, though she had not moved toward Oliver. "Our orders are clear. You are still considered a traitor. If you are aiding humans, that only confirms what the elders believed." Then you will have to kill me to carry out your orders, Karga said, her voice cold as winter stone. But I promise you, at least one of you will die with me. Perhaps both if I am quick. Is that what you want? To die in these hills for the sake of pride and old grudges. The two warriors exchanged glances, some unspoken communication passing between them. Oliver held his breath, every muscle tense, waiting for violence to erupt. But after a moment that stretched like an eternity, Garak slowly raised his hands, palms out in a gesture of peace. "We did not want this, Karga," he said, and there was genuine regret in his voice. "You were one of our best, but you made your choice and the clan made theirs. If you are determined to walk this path, we will not stop you. But know that you can never return. If we see you again, we will have no choice but to carry out the exile sentence." "I understand," Karga said, though her bow did not lower. "And you should understand that if anyone from the clan comes for me or for him, I will defend us both. Carry that message back to the war leader. Tell him that Karga of no clan is done with Black Ridge and its wars." Shura spat on the ground, a gesture of disgust, but she made no move to attack. "You are dead to us," she said. "Dead and forgotten. Enjoy your human pet while you can. Neither of you will last the winter alone." Then they were gone, melting back into the forest as silently as they had come. Karga held her position for a long moment, the bow still drawn, until she was certain they were truly gone. Only then did she lower the weapon, her hands shaking slightly with released tension. "Are you hurt?" she asked, turning to Oliver with concern cutting through the warrior mask. "No," he said, though his heart was still racing. "Thanks to you, again. You keep saving my life." "It seems to be becoming a habit," Karga said, and there was something almost like humor in her voice, though it was strained. She moved to sit beside him on the bank, suddenly looking very tired. "I am sorry. I had hoped the clan would not search for me. I should have been more careful, should have hidden our tracks better." "They would have killed me," Oliver said, the reality of that settling over him like a cold blanket, without a second thought. "And you stopped them. You chose me over them." "I chose what was right over what was easy," Karga corrected. "There is a difference." Oliver looked at her, really looked at her, seeing not just the orc warrior who had saved him but the woman beneath. She had given up everything, her home, her family, her entire life, first to spare a human child and now to protect him. That kind of courage, that kind of fundamental decency, was rare in humans. To find it in someone he had been taught to think of as a monster. It changed something fundamental in him. "Thank you," he said, and he put every ounce of feeling he had into those two words. "Not just for this, but for everything. For carrying me off that battlefield, for healing me, for giving me a reason to keep breathing when I had nothing left." Karga met his eyes, and something passed between them in that moment, some recognition that went deeper than words. "You are welcome, Oliver Finch," she said softly. "Though I think we are both fools for caring what happens to each other." "Probably," he agreed. "But I find I do not mind being a fool if it means I am your fool." She laughed at that, a real laugh that transformed her face, and Oliver felt something warm unfurl in his chest. It was too soon, too complicated, too fraught with impossibility. But sitting there by the stream with this woman who had become the center of his world in such a short time, he could not deny what he was beginning to feel. The encounter with the Black Ridge warriors changed things between them, though neither spoke of it directly. There was a new awareness, a heightened sense of how precarious their situation was. They were both exiles now, severed from their old lives with only each other to rely on. That knowledge drew them closer, creating an intimacy that went beyond the simple practicalities of survival. Oliver found himself watching Karga more than he should, noticing the way sunlight caught in her black hair, the unconscious grace of her movements, the small expressions that flickered across her face when she thought he was not looking. He told himself it was gratitude, nothing more, but he knew he was lying. What he felt was deeper and more dangerous than gratitude. For her part, Karga became more protective, rarely leaving him alone for long periods, always positioning herself between him and any potential threat. She taught him some of the orc language, patient with his clumsy pronunciation, and laughed when he mangled the words beyond recognition. In turn, he shared what little he knew of reading and writing, scratching letters in the dirt with a stick and watching her eyes light up with fascination. "Your people guard this knowledge," she said one afternoon, practicing the shape of letters with fierce concentration. "Among orcs, only the shamans and elders keep written records. Why do humans teach it to farmers?" "Not all humans," Oliver corrected. "My mother was the daughter of a minor merchant. She insisted I learn my letters, said it would give me opportunities beyond the farm. I thought she was wasting her time, but now I am grateful. It feels good to share something with you, to teach you as you have taught me." Karga looked up from the letters, her amber eyes searching his face. "Why does it matter to you? What I learn, what I know?" Oliver considered the question, turning it over in his mind. "Because you matter," he said finally, simply. "Because you are not just the orc who saved me. You are Karga, and you deserve to have every opportunity, every scrap of knowledge you want. Because the world tried to make you into something you are not, and I want to help you become whatever you choose to be." She stared at him for a long moment, something vulnerable and uncertain in her expression. Then she reached out slowly and touched his hand where it rested on his knee. It was a simple gesture, barely contact at all, but it felt monumental. "You are a strange man, Oliver Finch," she said, her voice rough with emotion. "You make me want to believe in things I thought I had lost." "What things?" he asked, not daring to move, afraid to break the moment. "Hope," she said simply. "The possibility of something better than survival. A reason to think about tomorrow, instead of just enduring today." His hand turned under hers, their fingers intertwining, and they sat like that as the sun moved across the sky, holding on to each other, and the fragile hope that maybe, impossibly, they could build something together from the ruins of their old lives. Weeks passed, and summer began to fade toward autumn. Oliver's leg healed slowly but surely, the bone knitting back together until he could put weight on it without the crutch. His side was now just a puckered scar, tender to the touch but no longer painful. He grew stronger, able to help more around the camp, to share the burden of their survival. They worked side by side, gathering food for the winter they both knew was coming, preserving meat and collecting the roots and tubers Karga knew would last through the cold months. It felt almost domestic, almost like the farm life Oliver had known, except infinitely better because of the woman who shared it with him. The touches became more frequent, more lingering. A hand on his shoulder when she passed, her steadying him when he stumbled, him brushing a strand of hair from her face when the wind blew it loose. Each contact felt charged with meaning, with the growing certainty of what was building between them. One night, as they sat by the fire beneath a sky full of stars, Oliver finally found the courage to speak what was in his heart. "Karga," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I need to tell you something, even though I know I probably should not. Even though it might ruin everything we have built here." She turned to him, the firelight painting her green skin in shades of gold. "Then perhaps you should not say it," she said, but there was no conviction in the words. "Some things are better left unspoken." "I cannot keep silent anymore," Oliver said, the words tumbling out now that he had started. "I am falling in love with you. Maybe I have been since the moment I woke in your arms. I know it is impossible. I know our peoples would revile us both. I know there is no future for a human and an orc. But I cannot pretend anymore that what I feel is just gratitude or friendship. It is more than that. You are everything to me." Karga closed her eyes, and he saw her jaw tighten. For a terrible moment he thought he had made a mistake, had destroyed the peace they had found. Then she opened her eyes again, and they were bright with unshed tears. "You foolish, wonderful man," she said, her voice breaking. "Do you think you are alone in this? Do you think I have not felt the same pull, the same impossible longing? I look at you and I see everything I want and can never have. A partner who sees me as a person, not a monster or a traitor. A future that is more than survival and loneliness. I love you, Oliver Finch, and it terrifies me." "Why does it terrify you?" he asked, moving closer to her, drawn like a moth to flame. "Because love means vulnerability," she said. "It means having something precious that can be taken away, and we have so little, you and I. We are exiles with no home, no people, nothing but each other. What happens when that is not enough? What happens when you wake one day and realize you have tied yourself to an orc and it costs you any chance of returning to your own kind?" "I will never regret choosing you," Oliver said with absolute certainty. "My own kind left me to die on that battlefield. You gave me life. You gave me hope. You gave me a reason to imagine a future. How could I ever regret that? And if we are found," Karga pressed, "if your people come for you or mine come for me, if we are forced to defend this impossible thing we have found, then we defend it," Oliver said simply. "Together. Because you were right before. Some things are more important than belonging, and loving you, being loved by you, is worth any price." Karga made a sound that was half laugh, half sob, and then she was in his arms or he was in hers, and it did not matter who moved first. They held each other like drowning people clutching at salvation, the fire crackling beside them and the stars wheeling overhead. "This is madness," Karga whispered against his shoulder. "Beautiful, terrible madness." "Then let us be mad together," Oliver replied, and he pulled back just enough to look into her face, to see his own feelings reflected in her amber eyes. "Let us build something here that defies the world. A home, a life, a future. Just you and me against all the forces that say we cannot exist." "Yes," Karga said, the word fierce and determined. "Yes to all of it, to madness and hope and love, to building a life with you, however long or short it may be." When they kissed, it was tentative at first, both of them aware of her tusks, of the differences between them. But desire and love found a way, as they always do, and what started as gentle exploration became something deeper, more passionate. They came together with a desperate intensity, bodies and hearts intertwining, claiming each other in the most fundamental way possible. Later, wrapped in furs beside the fire with her head on his chest and his arms around her, Oliver felt a peace he had never known. This was right, he knew with bone-deep certainty. Whatever challenges they would face, whatever hardships the world would throw at them, they would face them together. "We need to leave this place," Karga said softly, her fingers tracing idle patterns on his skin. "The Black Ridge clan knows we are here. Others might come, and winter is coming. This camp is fine for summer, but we will freeze when the snow comes. Where would we go?" Oliver asked, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. "We cannot go to human lands or orc territories." "There are places between," Karga said thoughtfully. "The deep wilderness far from both our peoples. It will be hard, isolated. But we could build a cabin, hunt and trap, make a life away from the wars and the hatred. Would that be enough for you? Could you be happy in such a life?" Oliver thought about his farm, about the life he had imagined before the war. Marrying a girl from a neighboring farm, raising children who would work the land as he had, growing old surrounded by grandchildren, and the satisfaction of a life well lived. That future was gone, burned away in the fires of war. But looking down at Karga, at this fierce, beautiful woman who had chosen him against all logic and reason, he found he did not mourn its loss. "More than enough," he said. "As long as I am with you, I can be happy anywhere." They left the camp 3 days later, carrying what supplies they could and leaving the rest behind. Oliver's leg was strong enough now for travel, and they moved carefully through the hills, avoiding roads and settlements, heading deeper into the wild lands where human and orc territories both faded into unclaimed wilderness. It took them 2 weeks of hard travel, foraging as they went, before they found the place that would become their home. A valley sheltered on 3 sides by steep hills, with a stream running through it and a forest full of game. Far from any human settlement or orc clan holding, isolated and beautiful. "Here," Karga said, looking out over the valley with satisfaction. "This can be ours. A place where we make our own rules, where we answer to no one but each other." They set to work immediately, knowing they had to build shelter before winter arrived in earnest. Oliver's farming experience served him well, and Karga's strength and knowledge of woodcraft made her an ideal partner. They felled trees and stripped logs, mortared stones from the stream, and slowly, day by day, a cabin began to take shape. It was hard work, exhausting and sometimes frustrating, but there was joy in it too. Joy in creating something together, in seeing the fruits of their combined labor. They worked from first light until darkness forced them to stop, and fell into their bedrolls each night too tired to do more than hold each other and sleep. The cabin was small but sturdy, a single room with a fireplace built of river stone and a roof of carefully layered bark and thatch. They chinked the walls with mud and moss to keep out the wind, built a door from split logs, and fashioned shutters for the single window. It was not much, but it was theirs, built by their own hands, a home in every sense of the word. The first night they spent in the completed cabin, with a fire crackling in the hearth and the wind howling outside, Oliver pulled Karga close and felt tears prick his eyes. "What troubles you?" she asked, concerned. "Are you not pleased with what we have built?" "I am more than pleased," he said, his voice thick. "I am overwhelmed. A few months ago I was dying on a battlefield, certain my life was over. Now I have a home, a future, a woman I love beyond measure. It feels like a dream, like I will wake and find myself back in that nightmare." "This is no dream," Karga assured him, her hand warm against his cheek. "This is real. We are real. And we will make this work, Oliver. I promise you that." Winter came early that year, snow beginning to fall in late autumn and not stopping until the world was buried in white. But the cabin held against the cold, and they had prepared well. Smoked meat hung from the rafters, dried berries and preserved vegetables filled baskets in the corner, and the fireplace kept the single room warm and comfortable. They spent the long winter nights talking, learning everything about each other, memorizing the details of their lives before fate brought them together. Karga taught him more of the orc language and the traditions of her people, the parts she wanted to keep even in exile. He taught her songs his mother had sung, human prayers and poems, pieces of his culture to match the pieces of hers. They made love often, learning each other's bodies with the same thoroughness they learned each other's histories. What had started as passion became something deeper, more intimate, a physical expression of the bond that grew stronger with each passing day. "You ever regret it?" Oliver asked one night, both of them warm beneath furs while snow piled against the walls outside. "Giving up your people for me?" Karga was quiet for a moment, considering the question with the seriousness it deserved. "I regret losing my family," she said finally. "I regret that my brothers will never know the happiness I have found, that my grandmother died without knowing I forgave her for not speaking in my defense. but I do not regret the choice that led me here. I regret circumstances, not actions. Do you regret losing your human life? I regret the war, Oliver said. I regret that so many died for nothing, that I can never go back to the boy I was before I saw that battlefield. But this life here with you, I could never regret this. You are the best thing that ever happened to me. Then we are both fortunate, Karga said, snuggling closer. To have found each other, to have had the courage to choose this path. Many people live their whole lives without knowing what we have. Spring came eventually, as it always does, the snow melting to reveal the valley green and alive with new growth. They planted a garden near the cabin, using seeds Oliver had carefully gathered from wild plants the previous autumn. They set traps and hunted, filling their stores for another winter. The work was constant but satisfying, each day bringing new challenges and small triumphs. One warm day in late spring, as they worked together in the garden, Oliver paused in his work and looked at Karga, her hands dirty with soil and her face alight with simple joy, and felt his heart nearly burst with love. "Marry me," he said, the words coming out before he had consciously decided to speak them. Karga looked up, surprised. "What? Marry me," he repeated, more certain now. "I know we have no priest to bless us, no witnesses to mark the occasion. I know human marriage might mean nothing to you, and orc bonding rituals are beyond my understanding. But I want to pledge myself to you in whatever way matters. I want to make promises and mean them. I want you to be my wife in more than just fact." Karga stood slowly, brushing dirt from her hands. "You want to marry an orc," she said, and he could not read her expression. "You want to bind yourself to me, to make vows before the gods of both our peoples that we will be together until death parts us." "Yes," Oliver said simply. "More than I have ever wanted anything." Her face transformed then, breaking into a smile so radiant it took his breath away. "Then yes," she said. "Yes, I will marry you, Oliver Finch. I will pledge myself to you in whatever way you wish. We will create our own ceremony, one that honors both our traditions and this new life we have built." They spent days preparing, both of them taking the ritual seriously despite their lack of witnesses or official blessing. Karga taught him the orc marriage rite, a ceremony of vows and blood oath that bound two people together as one. Oliver shared what he knew of human weddings, the exchange of promises and the binding of hands. On the longest day of summer, when the sun seemed reluctant to set, and the valley was full of light and life, they stood before the stream that ran through their land and married each other. They had no rings, but they exchanged carved wooden tokens, small representations of their commitment. They cut their palms with a knife and pressed them together, mingling their blood as orcs did. They spoke vows they had written themselves, promises of love and fidelity and partnership until death. "I take you as my husband," Karga said, her voice strong and clear. "My partner in all things. I vow to stand beside you in joy and sorrow, in plenty and in want, in peace and in struggle. My life is yours as yours is mine. We are two who become one, bound by love and choice." "I take you as my wife," Oliver replied, his own voice thick with emotion. "My heart and my home. I vow to honor you, to protect you, to value your strength and your tenderness equally. I will build our life together with you, face whatever comes with you at my side. You are my family now, my clan, my everything." They kissed as husband and wife, sealing their vows, and though there was no one to witness or applaud, it felt more real and binding than any ceremony conducted in a crowded church or clan hall. This was theirs, a marriage born of choice and love rather than obligation or expectation. That night they celebrated in their small cabin, a feast of the best food they had saved and wine Karga had made from wild berries. They made love with a new intensity as husband and wife now, bound by more than just emotion. And in the darkness, wrapped in each other's arms, they whispered plans and dreams for the future. "We should build an addition to the cabin," Oliver said. "Another room. We will need more space." "Why?" Karga asked, though there was knowing in her voice. "For children, eventually. I hope we will have children. Sons and daughters who belong to neither world and both, who will grow up knowing love instead of hatred." Karga was quiet for a long moment, and Oliver wondered if he had overstepped, if the idea of bearing his children was too much for her. But then she took his hand and placed it on her stomach, and he felt understanding dawn. "I am already pregnant," she said softly. "I have been certain for a few weeks now. I was waiting for the right time to tell you." Oliver felt shock and joy war within him, leaving him speechless for a moment. "Pregnant," he finally managed. "We are going to have a baby." "Yes," Karga said, and he could hear the smile in her voice. "In winter, I think. So you see, we will definitely need that addition to the cabin. And we will need to gather even more supplies, prepare for a child who will need us both." Oliver pulled her close, his hand still on her stomach where their child grew. "A baby," he whispered, wonder and terror and overwhelming love flooding through him. "Our baby. Part human, part orc, all ours." "Are you frightened?" Karga asked. "Terrified," Oliver admitted. "And happier than I have ever been. Is that possible, to be both at once?" "I think that is what love is," Karga said. "Terror and joy all mixed together. The fear of losing what we have, the happiness of having it at all. We will be good parents, Oliver. I know we will." They talked long into the night, making plans, dreaming of the child who would come. A son or a daughter who would never know the prejudice and hatred that had marked their parents' lives, who would grow up in a valley far from war, raised by two people who had chosen love over all the forces that tried to keep them apart. The summer passed into autumn, and Karga's pregnancy became more pronounced. Oliver built the addition to the cabin, working with fierce determination to have it ready before winter. He gathered more wood than they could possibly need, hunted and preserved more meat, prepared for the season when Karga would be unable to help as much, when they would have a child to protect from the cold. The first snow fell the day before Karga went into labor. Oliver had been checking the traps when he returned to find her breathing heavily by the fire, her hand on her swollen belly. "It is time," she said, and though her voice was steady, he could see the fear beneath. "The baby is coming." Oliver had helped birth calves and foals on the farm, but this was different. This was his wife and his child, and the fear nearly paralyzed him. But Karga needed him, so he pushed the fear aside and focused on what needed to be done. He built up the fire, laid out clean cloth and the herbs Karga had been preparing, filled a pot with water to boil. The labor was long and difficult. Karga was strong, stronger than any human woman could be, but bringing a new life into the world was never easy. She gripped his hand hard enough to bruise, breathed through the contractions with determined focus, refused to cry out even when he could see the pain was overwhelming. "You are doing wonderfully," Oliver said, wiping sweat from her brow. "So strong, so brave. Just a little longer." "Easy for you to say," Karga gasped out, and there was a hint of her usual humor even through the pain. "You do not have a child trying to tear you in half." Finally, as dawn light began to filter through the window, the baby came. Oliver caught the tiny, squirming form, cleared its mouth and nose as he had seen done with livestock, and felt his heart stop as the baby took its first breath and began to wail. "A boy," he said, his voice breaking. "Karga, we have a son." He placed the baby on Karga's chest, and she looked down at their child with wonder and exhaustion and fierce, protective love. The baby was small, smaller than Oliver had expected, with skin that was a pale greenish hue, lighter than his mother's but definitely not human. He had tiny pointed ears and what might become small tusks someday, but his face was perfect, beautiful, utterly theirs. "Hello, little one," Karga whispered, tears streaming down her face. "Welcome to the world. We are your mother and father, and we love you more than life itself." Oliver cut and tied the cord, dealt with the afterbirth, made sure both mother and child were safe and healthy. Then he simply sat beside them, his arm around Karga, his hand gently touching his son's soft head, and let himself feel the magnitude of what they had created. "What shall we name him?" Karga asked after a time. "He should have a name that honors both our peoples." They discussed it for a long time, trying different combinations, wanting something that felt right. Finally, they settled on a name that blended human and orc traditions, that would remind their son of his heritage and his unique place in the world. "Eric," Oliver said. "Eric Stormborn, because he came with the first snow of winter. Strong enough for both our peoples, a name he can be proud of." "Eric," Karga repeated, testing the sound. "Yes, Eric Stormborn, son of Oliver and Karga, born of two worlds and belonging fully to neither and both." The baby, as if recognizing his name, opened his eyes for the first time. They were gray-green, a perfect blend of his parents, and they looked up at them with the unfocused awareness of the newly born. Winter that year was the hardest they had faced, with a baby to care for and protect from the cold. But it was also the best, full of small miracles and overwhelming love. Eric grew strong and healthy, his cries filling the cabin with life and purpose. Oliver and Karga took turns walking him when he fussed, singing to him in both human and orc, teaching him without words that he was loved and wanted and perfect exactly as he was. Spring came as a blessing, allowing them to take Eric outside to show him the valley that was his birthright. He gurgled and reached for everything, endlessly curious, and they laughed at his antics and marveled at every tiny milestone. "He has your eyes," Karga said one afternoon as they sat outside the cabin, Eric playing in the grass between them. "And your stubbornness. He gets an idea in his head and will not let it go." "And he has your strength," Oliver countered, "and your courage. Watch how he reaches for things he cannot quite grasp yet. He does not give up, just tries again differently." As Eric grew from baby to toddler, they built their life around him and around each other. The cabin expanded again, rooms added for storage and eventually for more children, should they be blessed with them. The garden grew larger each year, providing more than enough food. They added chickens and goats, making their homestead more self-sufficient. Oliver taught Eric his letters as soon as the boy was old enough to hold a charcoal stick, scratching lessons in the dirt just as he had taught Karga. Eric learned both languages, flowing easily between Common and Orcish, creating his own unique blend. He learned to hunt with his mother, to farm with his father, to live in harmony with the land that sustained them. They had been in the valley 5 years. Eric, a bright and energetic child who filled their days with laughter, when they had their first visitors since settling. Oliver spotted them from a distance, a human man and woman, ragged and thin, stumbling through the forest as if fleeing something. "Stay with Eric," he told Karga, reaching for the bow they kept always ready. "I will see what they want," but Karga shook her head. "We face this together," she said. "As we face everything." Eric, inside the cabin. Now. Their son, trained since birth to obey when his parents used that tone, scurried inside without argument. Oliver and Karga moved to intercept the strangers, weapons ready but not openly threatening. The two humans stopped when they saw them, the man moving protectively in front of the woman. Both had the look of refugees, desperate and frightened, and Oliver felt his heart go out to them even as he remained cautious. "Please," the man said, his voice hoarse. We mean no harm. We are fleeing from a human settlement a week's journey south. They discovered my wife has orc blood from her grandmother. They were going to kill us both." Oliver glanced at the woman, seeing now the slight greenish tint to her skin, barely noticeable unless you were looking for it. Quarter blood, perhaps enough to mark her as different in a world that did not tolerate difference. "You are far from any settlement," Karga said, her voice neutral. "Why come this way?" "We heard rumors," the woman said, finding her courage. Whispers of a place where a human and an orc lived together, where they had made a home despite everything that said they should not exist. "We thought it was just a story, but we had nowhere else to go. If you are real, if you have truly built a life together, perhaps you would have mercy on us. Perhaps you would help us find our own place to survive." Oliver looked at Karga, seeing his own uncertainty reflected in her eyes. They had built their isolation carefully, had avoided contact with either humans or orcs for years. But looking at these two desperate people, he remembered being on that battlefield, remembered how Karga's mercy had given him a second chance at life. "We do not have much," he said finally, "but you are welcome to stay a few days, to rest and recover. We can share what we know about surviving in the wilderness, help you decide where to go from here." The relief on their faces was palpable. "Thank you," the man said. "I am Nathan, and this is my wife Clara. We will not impose long, I promise. Just enough to regain our strength and figure out our next step." They stayed a week in the end, sleeping in the barn Oliver had built for their animals, sharing meals and stories. Nathan had been a blacksmith before fleeing, and he helped Oliver repair tools and create new ones in thanks for their hospitality. Clara was skilled with plants and healing, and she and Karga exchanged knowledge, each learning from the other. Eric was fascinated by the visitors, especially Clara, who looked almost but not quite like his mother. She answered his endless questions with patience, explaining about mixed blood and the prejudice that came with it, helping him understand that he was not alone in being different. When they finally left, headed further north where Nathan had heard of other refugees and exiles gathering, Oliver and Karga stood watching them go with mixed feelings. "We could have asked them to stay," Karga said quietly. "Built another cabin, started a real community here." "We could have," Oliver agreed. "Is that what you want? More people, less isolation?" Karga considered the question, her hand finding his and squeezing gently. "I do not know," she admitted. "Part of me wants to keep this place just ours, our secret paradise. But another part wonders if we have a responsibility to others like us, to offer sanctuary to those who have nowhere else to go." "We do not have to decide now," Oliver said. "If more people find us, if others need help, we will deal with it as it comes. For now, we have each other and Eric and this life we have built. That is enough." But the world, it seemed, had other ideas. Over the next year, 3 more groups of refugees found their way to the valley, each carrying stories of persecution and flight. 2 mixed-blood couples, a group of orc exiles who refused to participate in raids against humans, even a family of humans who simply wanted to live away from the wars and prejudice. Slowly, without planning it, a community began to form. More cabins appeared in the valley, each family building their own home but working together to create common resources. A meeting hall was raised, a place for gathering and making decisions as a group. Gardens expanded, livestock multiplied, and the valley that had been a haven for 2 became home to dozens. Oliver found himself in an unexpected role as leader, his ability to mediate between human and orc perspectives making him valuable to the community. Karga, with her hunting skills and knowledge of the land, became the de facto guide for newcomers, teaching them how to survive and thrive in the wilderness. Eric grew up surrounded by children of mixed heritage, human and orc and everything in between. He learned that different was normal, that love and family came in many forms, that the prejudices of the outside world had no place in their valley. When Eric was 10, Karga gave birth to twins, a boy and a girl who inherited their mother's green skin and their father's blue eyes. They named them Greta and Elias, and Eric took his role as big brother with endearing seriousness, watching over his siblings with fierce protectiveness. One evening, after the twins were asleep and Eric was practicing his letters by lamplight, Oliver and Karga sat outside their cabin, looking out over the valley that had become so much more than they had ever imagined. "Did you ever think it would come to this?" Oliver asked, gesturing at the scattered lights of other homes, the smoke rising from chimneys, the sound of distant laughter. "That our private sanctuary would become a village?" "Never," Karga admitted. "When we came here, I thought we would live and die alone, that our love would be our secret and our burden. But look what we have created instead. A place where people like us can exist, can build families, can simply be." "You were right, that first day when you saved me," Oliver said, pulling her close. "I was too light to leave behind. And that choice, that moment of mercy, led to all of this. How many lives have been changed because you decided to carry one dying soldier off a battlefield?" "We cannot know," Karga replied, "but I am glad I made that choice. Every day I am glad." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars emerge overhead, the same stars that had witnessed their wedding vows, that had shone down on the birth of their children, that had guided refugees and exiles to their valley. "I love you," Oliver said, the words as true now as they had been years ago. "Every day I love you more. You are my wife, my partner, the mother of my children, the reason I get up each morning and face the day with joy instead of despair." "And I love you," Karga replied. "My husband, my heart, the man who sees me as a person instead of an orc or a warrior or anything but myself. You gave me back my humanity even as you taught me to embrace my orc heritage. You are everything to me." As the years passed, the valley community grew and thrived. They established trade with a few trusted contacts in the outside world, careful to maintain their isolation while securing necessary supplies. Children grew to adulthood, some staying in the valley, others venturing out to find their own paths. The settlement became known, in whispers and rumors, as a place of sanctuary, a haven for those who did not fit in either human or orc society. Eric, grown to a man, married a half-orc woman named Sarah, daughter of refugees who had come when he was a child. They built their own cabin on the far side of the valley, and gave Oliver and Karga 3 grandchildren who called them by orc words of respect and love. Greta became a healer, learning from her mother and the other knowledge keepers in the community, traveling sometimes to help those who could not come to the valley. Elias followed his father's love of farming, expanding the agricultural output until the valley was nearly self-sufficient. Oliver's hair turned gray, and Karga's face gained the lines of age and experience. But their love never dimmed, never became routine or ordinary. Each morning, Oliver woke grateful for another day with her. Each evening, Karga thanked the gods for the human who had changed her life so completely. They stood together at the highest point of the valley one autumn afternoon, 20 years after they had first arrived. The entire settlement was visible below them, a thriving community of nearly 100 souls, human and orc and every combination between, living in harmony and peace. "We did this," Oliver said wonderingly. "From nothing, from 2 broken people with no hope, we built all of this." "We did," Karga agreed, "and it will outlast us. Our children and their children will carry it forward, will keep building on what we started. This is our legacy, Oliver. Not just our family, but this entire community of people who learn to see beyond the hatred of the outside world. Oliver turned to her, taking both her hands in his, looking into the amber eyes that had been his first sight upon waking to a new life. "Thank you," he said simply, "for saving me, for loving me, for building this impossible, beautiful life with me." "Thank you," Karga replied, "for seeing me, for choosing me, for proving that love is stronger than prejudice, that two people with courage can change the world, even if only a small part of it." They kissed there on the hilltop, husband and wife, partners in all things. Their love story written in the lives they had touched and the community they had built. Below them, smoke rose from chimneys, children played in the streets, and life continued in the valley where an orc woman had once carried a dying human soldier, declaring him too light to leave behind. That choice, that single act of mercy, had created ripples that spread far beyond what either of them could have imagined. It had saved not just Oliver's life, but dozens of lives, creating a haven where the rejected and the different could find acceptance and peace. It had proven that the stories both peoples told about each other were lies, that humans and orcs were not destined to be enemies, that love could cross any boundary if given the chance. As the sun set over the valley, painting everything in shades of gold and orange, Oliver and Karga walked back down to their cabin, their hands intertwined as they had been since that day by the stream when they had admitted their love. They returned to the home they had built, the life they had created, the family and community that surrounded them with warmth and acceptance. That night, as they lay in bed with the sounds of the valley settling in for sleep around them, Oliver felt a completeness he had never imagined possible. He had been a dying soldier, abandoned on a battlefield with nothing to live for and every reason to give up. But a green-skinned warrior woman had looked at him and decided he was worth saving, worth carrying, worth keeping alive. From that choice, from that moment of unexpected mercy, had come everything beautiful in his life. His wife, his children, his home, the community of misfits and exiles who had found their way to this hidden valley and made it into something extraordinary. All of it traced back to the moment when Karga had said those simple words, "You are too light to leave behind." "I was not too light," Oliver whispered into the darkness, Karga already asleep in his arms. "I was exactly the right weight for you to carry. Just as you have carried me through life, through every challenge and joy, never letting me fall, never letting me fail. We have carried each other, my love, and I will carry you in my heart and in my arms until my very last breath." Outside, the valley slept in peace, protected by the love of two people who had defied every expectation, who had built a life and a community from nothing more than hope and determination. Their children slept safe in their beds, secure in the knowledge that they were loved and valued. Their grandchildren dreamed of futures full of possibility, unmarred by the prejudices that had marked their grandparents' early lives. The settlement that had begun with one act of mercy on a blood-soaked battlefield had become a beacon of what was possible when people chose love over hatred, acceptance over prejudice, hope over despair. It stood as a testament to the power of individual choice, to the ripple effects of kindness, to the simple truth that everyone, no matter how broken or different, deserves a chance at life and love. And at the center of it all were Oliver and Karga, the farmer and the warrior, the human and the orc, the husband and wife who had taken a chance on each other and won everything. Their story would be told for generations in the valley, passed down as legend and inspiration, a reminder that even in the darkest times, even when all seems lost, mercy and love can create miracles. As dawn broke over the valley the next morning, bringing with it a new day full of possibility, Oliver woke to find Karga already up, standing at the window and watching the sunrise paint the sky in brilliant colors. He joined her there, wrapping his arms around her from behind, and they stood together in silence, watching their world come to life. "Another day," Karga said softly. "Another gift." "Yes," Oliver agreed, "and I am grateful for every single one as long as I spend them with you." They stood together as the valley woke around them. Two people who had found each other against all odds, who had built something lasting and beautiful from the ruins of war and exile. They had proven that love could transcend any boundary, that family was not defined by blood or species but by choice and commitment, that even the most unlikely stories could have the happiest of endings. And as the sun rose higher, bathing everything in golden light, Oliver, Finch, and Karga looked out over all they had created and knew with absolute certainty that they had found exactly what they were meant to find. Not just survival, not just refuge, but home. A home built on love, sustained by hope, and destined to endure long after they were gone. A living legacy of what could be achieved when two people decided that the other was worth fighting for, worth believing in, worth building a life around. The valley stretched before them, full of life and promise, a testament to the power of a single choice made on a battlefield years ago. Karga had chosen to save Oliver, and in doing so, had saved them both. Together, they had created not just a life but a community, not just a family but a movement, proving to anyone willing to look that the divisions between peoples were artificial and could be overcome. And so they lived, loved, and thrived in their hidden valley, surrounded by family and community, secure in the knowledge that their love had changed the world, even if only for the people lucky enough to call that valley home. They had found their happily ever after, and it was sweeter than anything either could have imagined, worth every sacrifice, every hardship, every moment of doubt. Their story was complete, their ending not an ending at all but a continuation, a promise that love would endure, that their children would carry forward the lessons they had learned, that the valley would remain a sanctuary for as long as people needed places where difference was celebrated rather than condemned. Oliver and Karga, the human and the orc, the farmer and the warrior, the husband and wife had won. Not through violence or force, but through the quiet courage of choosing each other every single day, of building something beautiful from nothing, of proving that love, in the end, was stronger than any force that tried to tear them apart. And that, truly, was the happiest ending of all.